So I was telling everybody kind of when you were gone, I was kind of like fumbling all over my words, but sort of getting to the point of how you and I had met when you were those 2 minutes when you were trying to find a place. And I kind of want to dig into that. I believe 100% that the struggles that we've gone through in our life are the exact reasons why we have the strength that we have. And I feel like you're on the same boat as me in that thinking.
Absolutely.
Do you mind talking about some of your struggles and what strengths you've actually adopted because of those challenges?
Sure. So I can honestly say that there was a time in my life where I felt like I was the victim, like, woe is me. I've had this complex life and this difficult life. But then I decided I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to be the victor, not the victim anymore. So when I was born in Iraq, my family moved to America when I was 1.5. And when I was 6 years old, my mom became a Jehovah's Witness. And my dad, I grew up Catholic. I was born as into a Catholic household. When I was 6, my mom became a Jehovah's Witness. And then after that, my dad started to beat my mom. So I've witnessed physical and verbal abuse from my father to the point where he almost killed my mom. And then when I was 16, I had sexual molestation from a family member that was living with us at the time. And then when I was 19, I got engaged to a guy and went on to get raped by that person. And then broke up with that person, got married to a Jehovah's Witness when I was 24. And he belonged to the all-American family. I just wanted a normal life. And I married that. But that also came with insecurities that got thrown onto me, causing me to live a very caged life. I couldn't really have any friends and felt like I was flirting with all the guys that I spoke to. And it was just really, really toxic. And I was married to him for almost 8 years. And I asked for a divorce. And with that came being disfellowshipped from the Jehovah's Witness religion. And then that led me to 2 years of what I call, I know this is another question that you're going to ask, but it led me to 2 years of purgatory, which I had a very difficult time because as a Jehovah's Witness, you can't really be friends with people in the world. And I couldn't be friends with any of the Jehovah's Witnesses since I was disfellowshipped and I wanted to get back into the religion. But then after 2 years of trying to get back into the religion, I decided, you know what, I actually want to be a happy person, and I didn't know what my life was going to look like. So I strived to figure that out along the way.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What do you feel like you've learned from all of that?
You know what? That you are not stagnant, that you are not a tree, that if you want to change your life, you can do anything you want. I think a lot of people are just so stuck in their head just because they've lived a certain lifestyle for a certain amount of time, or they're of a certain age. They're like, I'm too old. I can't do that. I don't have like all these excuses. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough education. I don't have the means. Unfortunately, these are excuses. Mm-hmm. If you want to do something, there's a possibility that you can do it. It might take a little bit more work than maybe another person that's already excelling at whatever it is that you want to do. But where there's a will, there's a way, and you can do whatever it is that you want to. You will find a way to make it happen. Even if you have a very small budget, even if you have an education after you dropped out of high school or whatever, like if you want to do something, we have a world of libraries and books and information, and we have Wi-Fi, and we have so much at our advantage that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago, that people just like, they come up with excuses, and it's easier to like compare yourself to somebody else than just actually making those changes that need to happen to make the life that you dream of.
100%. I totally agree with you. You were kind of touching on the purgatory. I've heard you speak about a time when you felt like you were in complete isolation. Last time we spoke, I kind of I had never really thought of it the way that you had explained it, but do you mind kind of explaining that and what you learned from that experience? Because that's a tough one.
Sure. And you know what? Those years, so I got disfellowshipped when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I never thought I was going to get disfellowshipped or shunned from the religion. And right when I happened to me, I knew I wanted to get back into the religion, the organization, because I grew up in that organization. That's where all my friends were. My mom is still a Jehovah's Witness. She's been a regular pioneer for over 30 years. She's recruited over 100 people. She's like one of the evangelists in the organization. It's kind of scary, but I was unknown as her daughter, and as far as that concerned, like I had a lot of expectations to live up to, because she was very much like, you need to come back to the religion as soon as possible, and I made that a promise to her. And then after that happened, and I tried so hard. So, as you know, to get back into the religion, you have to write these letters of what they call letters of repentance. So I wrote the letters in the span of the 2 years. I moved from Michigan to Chicago, and I was still going to the Kingdom Hall in Chicago, even though you can't really speak to anyone. Mm-hmm. So I was going in, the elders knew my situation, and I would just leave before the whole thing happened, or the Kingdom Hall got taken away, or what am I saying, ended, and everyone's would end up speaking to me. So I left before it ended. And so every single time I wrote 3 letters when I lived in Chicago and 1 letter when I lived in Michigan, and they were all denied. And I would have anxiety attacks and just start crying. And my sister was the only one I spoke to at the time. And then I started also building up my Instagram. So I had a big following on Instagram of people that I just spoke to them, and I shared my passion of cooking and cooking healthy recipes. And then I shared bits and pieces of my life with my divorce, my family, just the religion. And so they became my new community of people, even though they weren't real people. They just became this community of people that I had spoke to. So that was my, like, wow, there are people out there that actually believe in me. And when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you know, they teach you that the world is bad and toxic and horrible, and they're going to chew you up and spit you out, and they're not real people. They're not going to love you. But it's actually the Jehovah's Witnesses that are all those things. They're the ones who are going to love you conditionally. They like you if you're doing all the things that they're wanting you to do. But the moment you don't do the things that they want you to do and you get kicked out, then they completely shun you. So those 2 years of purgatory, as I call them, were years of me to reflect on, who am I actually living for? And that for me is a question that I ask a lot of people now that I am a coach, that there's people that are just living their lives for other people. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people like that. They're living their life for their parents, their siblings, their community, and their society, and they're not even asking themselves, what do I want? Mm-hmm. No, it's they forget about all that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey for me to figure that out, because it's constantly a learning battle.
Yeah. When you and I had first talked about it, you used the word isolation, which is why I used it in the question. And it's interesting because when I went through that same thing, I never identified it as being isolation. And when you said that, it hit me so hard, because like, I understand the concept of it, you know, like, you don't have your JW friends or associates, you don't have worldly friends or associates. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to get teary-eyed. But
that isolation is extremely challenging, because, you know, as a witness, you're told that these worldly people, you know, there's the scripture in Deuteronomy, I think it was Deuteronomy 13, where it says bad association spoils useful habits. And they fucking ingrain that shit in your head.
Yeah.
Like the moment you try to be friends with people that are not Jehovah's Witnesses or not, trying to be Jehovah's Witnesses, like you can be friends with somebody who's like studying or something like that. But the moment you are actually friends with like a coworker or a school friend or somebody you met just whatever, like they're gonna ruin you. They're gonna ruin you for life, and that is it's difficult. But then when you go to the Kingdom Hall and you see your old friends or you see witnesses and you're like, they seem like a nice person, I want to be friends with them, but you can't because you are disfellowshipped. It puts you in a very weird situation. And believe me, in those 2 years, there were so many times where I met a nice guy or I met a nice girl and I wanted to be friends with that person. Yeah. But I knew that there was a certain point that I was going to have to cut them off if I was going to become a Jehovah's Witness. So in my head, I was already preparing myself. Like, I can't be friends with you. Like, it's cool that we're meeting for coffee, but like, it's going to have to end once I get back into the quote unquote truth.
Yeah.
Because that's it's a bunch of bullshit. Like they're constantly feeding you all this stuff in your head to make you think that this is the only way. Everything else, you're going to get destroyed at Armageddon, and you're a piece of shit if you don't come back into the organization. That's why they say it's a cult. So, and it is a cult because they're constantly teaching you. You wake up reading the daily examining the scriptures book. You study for all the meetings. You have 3 meetings a week. You're in this like cage. And when I described my first marriage to, I was in a cage from being a Jehovah's Witness, and then I was in another cage from my marriage. So I was like in all these cages, and I was not able to express myself and be who I wanted to be. And as a Jehovah's Witness, everything is fear-based. They say that God is he has all these rules because he loves you. Mm-hmm. And that is the reason why he has all these rules. So you're just constantly afraid. You're afraid of everything I do, everything I say. Am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be shunned? Am I going to be okay with the direction that I go? Because God, what is God going to think of me? And you're constantly like, this fear base is just so high, and we already have this negativity, fear-based bias that we have, and going in that direction is a lot easier than going into a more liberated, positive experience in life. So, and that's why a lot of witnesses and people that are really big into religion have so much fear inside of them.
Yeah, same. And I can totally attest to that. I was just talking to my fiance the other day about how I always have this feeling that I'm going to die, and not like going to die from cancer or going to die from a car accident, but still there's this fear of me just like disappearing, not knowing how. But I was talking to him about how I've had a will set up, and I'm only 38, and I've had a will for like 9 years or something crazy. And, the life insurance for my child, and real, just this fear of making sure, like I'm still in contact with my parents. But I have all of my passwords, all of my bank accounts, all of the addresses, like everything that's mine that they would possibly need if I died, I had sent to them, and I renew it consistently. Like every 2 years, I send my mom a new list of like the new phone numbers and new addresses and new whatever. And it's not like oh, just so you have it. It's literally ingrained that I'm going to perish, that I'm going to die. And it's frustrating knowing where that stems from, and then not being able to, feeling as if, I'm not able to control it, because even though, death happens. And yes, I know that it's ingrained because of how I grew up, but then still being like, yes, and it's still important to have. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating to to know where it's coming from, but then still feeling a need to do it just in case. But like, what is the just in case? Is it just in case because unconsciously I feel like I'm actually going to die, or is it just in case meaning I'm being a responsible adult and I'm being a responsible mother, and then trying to like balance that in my head as to what it actually is. Frustrating. Very frustrating.
I can imagine, and I think a lot of it has to do with growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. And yeah, Armageddon is going to happen, can happen any day, and you don't know any of those things. Exactly. So yeah, letting that indoctrination idea go is really difficult, but unraveling all the things that you have that led up to this idea of Armageddon and just really understanding it, and then finally getting to the core of what it is and accepting it, and then releasing that energy that, you know, the people that taught us about Armageddon were brainwashed themselves. Yeah. So accepting that, and, you know, I feel bad for, like, I always say, like, have compassion for those people, because they were doing things that were led to them or taught to them by other, unfortunately, imperfect people that needed to feel validated. So it's like this long stem of people that needed to feel validated that led us to where we are right now. And then just freeing yourself of all that is, it takes time. It takes time. And it takes a lot of self-compassion. So like forgiving yourself for feeling the way that you do, because forgiving yourself is like the foremost and most important part of finally freeing yourself of the way that you are.
Yeah. And that was one of what you just said there is one of the reasons why I was drawn to you, is there doesn't seem to be a lot of times when you talk to people who used to be Jehovah's Witnesses, there's a lot of hatred and frustration and anger and this like deep disgust for the religion. And I, as much as I know that there's issues that I'm still dealing with and that I'm still peeling back and that I'm still obviously emotional about, I don't have any like anger towards it. I actually feel like I learned a lot from it. I learned how to speak well. I learned how to, confront people. I learned how to be unsafe. There's actually a part of me that's actually frustrated sometimes because my son, 17, I stopped bringing him probably when he was like 7, maybe even earlier than that. But anyways, knowing that just that part of it and how that could have benefited him throughout all these years kind of frustrates me a little bit, because I know that there are really good teachings that they teach. It's just wrapped up in kind of a not so good package, but
I get it. They say with every religion there's a little bit of truth and a little bit of bad, but in my opinion, God doesn't live in religion. He lives wherever you choose to take it. And I still, even though I'm not a Jehovah's Witness anymore and I'm not religious, I still believe in a higher power. I believe you as well. And that could mean something different for everyone, but I think it's important for you to find what speaks to you and not have to follow this ideology of what people are trying to tell you to believe in. That's really important.
100%. Do you mind reading our comment?
Yeah, you're not alone. I still make the sign of the cross, even though I'm not Catholic in certain instances. Today, I forgive yourself and don't pass on these toxic, controlling religious and rules to my kids. I let them choose what they want to believe. I love that. That's very, very important, to allow your kids to let them choose what they want to, because if anything, they're going to resent you when they get older.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.